It always amazes me how certain students' responses leave an impression on me. Welcome back to Light in Education, where we learn, inspire, guide, help, and teach. The classroom is oftentimes where doubt and confusion meet discovery and learning. Whether there is doubt about an idea or confusion about what's going on in society, they influence individuals who are part of the learning process. And oftentimes, students and even teachers bring those two things into the classroom. Such was the case in a classroom which I had the privilege of facilitating learning. The flip side, however, was that I was the one who was laden with doubt and confusion, whereas students, as always, they are primed for discovery and learning. My doubt and confusion centered around Colin Kaepernick's silent protest. Now, being an African American who has lived in the United States for her entire life, I had a deep understanding of what Kaepernick was doing. I understood the message that he was trying to convey to Americans, and I also understood why he chose to convey that message the way that he did. However, when I spoke with many people, because there were many conversations about what was actually going on with protest in the NFL, some would say, I understand what he's trying to do, but I just don't agree with the way he's going about doing it. On the other hand, someone would say, no, I wholeheartedly agree with Colin Kaepernick. We need to put the discussion about racism and police brutality on a grander scale. He has the platform to do that, and I'm just with him 100%. Then there were those like me who would engage in conversations, but wouldn't commit one way or the other. So needless to say, I was just confused about the whole situation. And this is something that was going on in our society, and it's something that continues to go on in our society. And so I talked with a few of my colleagues, and we decided to put a particular question that's related to the Kaepernick issue into the minds, into the hands, into the discovery space of our students. Colin Kaepernick made it very clear that there were issues that had gone on in America for years and they needed to be addressed. He made it very clear that that was the reason that he silently protested. However, some sort of way, it became more about the kneeling during the national anthem and the disrespect for the flag and being unpatriotic. And so as my colleagues and I talked about a lesson plan that we would put together for this, we decided to pose a question, an overarching question for students to not only delve into this particular issue, but to also research some things with regard to U.S. history, with regard to being a U.S. citizen, and with regard to Colin Kaepernick. The first part of the lesson was to give students time to look at the quote, to think about it, and to write down their thoughts. Did they agree, disagree, and to explain their thoughts. Afterwards, we wanted them to talk about it. We wanted them to verbalize their thoughts. Now, I must say, during this particular process, there was one student who I heard from across the room. All 3 students she went to, I heard her very passionate response. And it was that she totally disagrees with Colin Kaepernick. He should stand for the flag. The flag is a symbol of freedom. And not only that, it symbolizes the lives that were lost. People fought for his freedom. People sacrificed for his freedom, and he should respect that and he should stand. Not only that, this student said that if he was so unpatriotic and disrespectful, he should find another country to go live in. Then there was another student's response, or this student posed a question. And her question was, why was he still talking about oppression? Wasn't oppression during slavery time, and wasn't that hundreds of years ago, and shouldn't he move on by now? We're talking about middle school students. Middle school students' responses are very pure. They're innocent. In some cases, they may show where someone has influenced their thought process, but it's their truth at the moment. And so I appreciated that. I definitely wanted to make the ground very fertile for them to be more curious and be intrigued by the subject. And so I mimicked their thoughts and I said, yeah, you know what? I wonder too. Why is he still talking about oppression? Yes, slavery was hundreds of years ago. And why would he still say the country oppresses people of color? And if the flag stands for freedom, why wouldn't he stand to show respect for something that's as great as freedom? And so that took us back to that overarching question of, is the flag an issue? Or is it the American people's failure to uphold the values that the flag represents? And so that set the stage for just really diving into not only Colin Kaepernick, but diving into the current state of these United States of America. That we live in a world of standards-based teaching. So this standards-based lesson pulled in standards from U.S. history, standards from civics, standards from English language arts. The lesson plan took them through parts of U.S. history. And so we looked at the Pledge of Allegiance. We looked at the lyrics to the Star-Spangled Banner. We also looked at the flag itself and what does the flag represent. And of course, we all agree that the flag represents freedom, justice, liberty, fairness, peace. And so that took us back to the question, well, is the flag the issue? Or is it the American people's failure to uphold the values that it represents? And so once we looked at the history and we found out what the flag represents, of course we ruled it out. The flag is not the issue. Well, then what is it that's going on with the American people? And that's where we really dived into the current state of our nation. Colin Kaepernick was questioned by reporters, and I shared that video clip with students where he says that there are issues that have gone on for years that need to be addressed. And it goes back to before when I asked, or when we were asking, well, what is his deal? Now we have a quote from him, and my question now was, what issues is he referring to? What's really going on? And so I did not give them one particular passage or the other to read. I gave them time to research. Now, I gave them specific keywords to research, and I definitely monitored what they were doing and the sites that they were going to. And I gave them guiding questions to answer. After that, they were now ready to answer that final question of, was the flag an issue? Or was it the American people's failure to uphold the values of the flag? Many of them came to understand why Colin Kaepernick silently protested during the national anthem. But what one student taught me was, and I will put it in her words, this was the same student at the very beginning of the lesson very passionately disagreed with Colin Kaepernick. She came back to me and she said, you know, I changed my opinion about Kaepernick. And I said, oh really, in what way? She said, well, if you think about it, he's really being patriotic. And I said, really? How? She said, well, he's really showing us that we are not representing the country or the flag well. He's actually standing up by kneeling because he's showing us that we're not taking care of each other. She also said that personally, she would continue to stand for the flag, but if someone chose not to, she would not be upset with them. She would respect their decision. Although I collaborated with colleagues to put this lesson together, what I had anticipated was for students to understand why Colin Kaepernick was silently protesting during the national anthem. However, a student taught me that Colin Kaepernick was actually standing by kneeling. His stance was that we can do better as a people to take care of each other. We can better represent our country by speaking up when something wrong is happening, and to hold each other accountable for being better and for treating each other better. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a valuable lesson that a student taught me about Colin Kaepernick. Thank you for joining us today on Light in Education. I hope to see you the next time.